Claudio, Venu, great to have you both in CNBC TV, and congratulations on the launch of yet another plant here in India. I believe it's your fourth in the last year or so. That's an approximate one plant per quarter. So at the outset, what does this do to your capacity here in India? And what's the investment like in all these plants that you've been launching over the year, Claudio?
Yeah, sure. First of all, it's a pleasure to be back. And as you said, it's been a quite consistent, maybe even some kind of small steps, but all really well planned and actually really well aligned with what we see is the need not only for the Indian demand and not only to help accelerating the energy transition, the clean energy transition for India, but also globally. And this one here, it's right at the center of that. We're talking about HVDC technology. We're talking about also power quality with STATCOM technology that will help adding the much needed flexibility to that future energy system. And what we're having here is actually taking the next step, which we were missing, of localizing the manufacturing of the converter valve, which is the key part of the technology. We already have the converter transformer technology localized in India. We already have the control system. So now we're completing the whole portfolio of what is basically the HVDC technology that comes on top of the AC grid to deliver this decarbonized energy system.
Right. And I'm told HVDC is a very critical component, especially here in India, given the renewable energy targets we have by 2030, and transmitting that power becomes all the more crucial. But given the pace of plant launches you've had, how much ability do you have right now in this market insofar as transmission is concerned? Is there a capacity that you can achieve here in India after these launches?
So first of all, it's what we have in India is 80–85% of what we do globally is now localized. And that's a very important part because India represents also a very important market across the entire portfolio of technologies, across the entire portfolio of applications that are needed to strengthen, enhance the grid piece, which is basically connecting from generation to consumption, the future electrical system. And from that perspective, we're looking at, once again, learning, creating our footprint, strengthening our footprint and learning from India, and then taking also some of those learnings outside India. The differentiator part here is, of course, India is a very competitive market. You heard me say this many times, and it's good for us to be here precisely to make sure that we have that competitiveness edge. But at the same time, is a market that is creating an opportunity to scale a lot of these technologies, and not many markets can give you that extra advantage.
Absolutely. And Venu, let's talk specifics now. I believe the order book is the one bright spot as far as India is concerned. In fact, the order book saw a 31% growth as far as your latest numbers are concerned. What potential lies ahead, really, given that we speak in the context of the green energy push? Half of all of India's energy needs to be green by 2030. That's the target the government has set for itself. What's the order book looking like as far as this market is concerned going forward?
So let me just give you, you heard me saying that, we used to have one HVDC project for every 5 to 6 years previously. Okay. Today, the need is every one large HVDC project per year. So that's the kind of scale and speed we need to have this technology to deploy to get into the targets of 2030 or beyond that. So latching on to that, that's exactly what we have invested here. Not only localizing our technology, localizing our skills, etc., and locally produced things we are offering to our customers in India, and whether they are the industries or utilities or new emerging sectors such as the data centers, etc. in that. So as you know, we have been having a very clear strategy of driving a high growth sectors in our view, that is the HVDC, the automation, the service piece, the data centers, or the industries in that. And the result of that is what you have seen, 31% year-on-year growth of orders in this quarter. And we continue to bring more and more technologies and localizing the technology. As we speak today, we are more than 80% of what we produce globally, we are producing locally here. So those are our growth drivers in coming back. In addition to the domestic market,
Absolutely.
we also look at exports. Where we said 1/4 of what we produce here, we also serve in other markets, etc. Like that.
Right. But Claudio, even as Venu talks so much about the potential that India has, I think the one fly in your ointment would be supply chain constraints. And you always saw this coming, especially given the, global cues that we've seen in the last year or so. Is that going to be an impediment to growth in India, given the fact that even revenues have suffered as far as India is concerned on account of supply chain roadblocks? How worried are you that this could possibly be an impediment to your growth in this market?
It's an important point. I'd say two parts of that. One is on the short term, we still see headwinds on that supply chain. We're expecting some stabilization, but it will take a couple of quarters still. We will have to go through this in 2023. And that's not just for India, that's on global scale as you know. But on the medium to longer term, I'm actually more optimistic. And particularly when I look at what we can do in India. Once again, if you think about the scalability and what India has to offer as an entire ecosystem, we have the talent. We have now a drive, a very strong drive on localizing, building the supply chain in India for what it's needed in the future to deliver this energy transition, to deliver a decarbonized energy system, which, as we all know, it will be more and more electrical. And there is a lot of very interesting initiatives and a very strong momentum going into making India the next hub for not only the engineering capabilities that we all know is available here, but also the manufacturing and the technology capabilities. So that supply chain opportunity is there. India can help the entire globe to accelerate this energy transition, and we definitely want to be part of that, and that's why we're taking these steps.
And you foresee struggle for 2 quarters or so, like you rightly said, but even as you continue to see some stress on supply chains for the interim, the fact is that the potential for future orders is also heating up. For instance, the ambitious locomotive electrification plan, public transport electrification. Siemens just landed a $3 billion deal to, electrify. You are a potential player on that front as well. Do you feel that these bottlenecks in the interim could get sorted out before you actually go about approaching these big daddies, so to speak, when it comes to projects? Do you think we'll have enough time to finish off sorting this out before we get on to big projects like that?
I'd say this is going to be a learning. It's going to be a learning to ramp up the entire supply chain to be able to cope with this. If you just think on what it takes to deliver this energy transition from our perspective, it's going to be 3 times more energy generated, and then 3 to 4 times also more energy transmitted and transported, right? And of course, we don't have today the entire value chain, the entire supply chain gear up for that new scale.
Right.
And that's what we need to work on. We need to do our part, but we need to make sure that also, again, and this is one of the key parts of our strategy as well, we need to force ourselves to work with partners. We need to force ourselves to work with the partners throughout the supply chain and to work with the customers as partners to deliver that technology.
Right.
Just to add to Claudio on this, you talked about the rail sector. Rail sector is one of our, very focused sector, and we have a very major play in the rail sector in that. Every second Shatabdi U-boat is powered through Hitachi Energy transformer. Every third Rajdhani is powered through our thing in that. That way, every second dedicated freight corridor train is powered through our technology in that. Similarly, the 9 out of the 10 metro station, whether it is Delhi or Mumbai or thing, is powered through our SCADA and automation system. So we have a very big play in that, and considering the very large projects where the Indian Railways is looking at it, we are also looking at further expanding our factories in that.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because the recently concluded budget speech also made mention of a massive capex overall, but also one of the largest allocations for the Indian Railways. And not just that, also 48% hike in terms of green energy allocation to the ministry. So I have to ask you, Venu, which of these low-hanging fruits would you be most interested in getting your hands on?
Absolutely. As you rightly said, this is the largest ever budget allocation for the Indian Railways. So just to give a sense, it's almost 9 times of financial year 13-14 year allocations in that. So that's the scale required, and we are actually gearing up to supply our products, systems, and services, and whether it's a local transformer or for the EMUs or local transformer for the dedicated freight corridors or metro or also high-speed trains. All those things are our technology where we have fully localized and fully we are manufacturing that. We are looking forward to support our customers in that sectors.
Right. So what is your outlook then on future order book growth, given that there's so much potential that lies ahead?
Yeah. As a listed company, we don't put any number, but let me give you a little bit of sense. We have a clear strategy. As part of the strategy, if the market is growing some X, we want to grow higher than the market.
Okay.
So and consistently we have been growing for the last several quarters in that. That's the reason even though we have this quarter 31% year-on-year growth orders, if you take a 9 months cumulative in this financial year, we have more than 100% growth in orders in that.
Right.
So we have been growing in our own defined high growth sectors and in a traditional sectors as well as in the new age sectors in that.
Right. All right. But Claudio, even as we contend with, supply chain constraints that have existed, even as the order book looks good, I think you've been quite vocal in that you want to ramp up exports from the manufacturing facilities you have here. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but 25% is the kind of export share that you're looking at. But given these challenges and given the large scale of orders that you're also seeing domestically itself, realistically, what kind of an export number are you looking at going forward?
That will depend a lot on how we continue to serve this global demand that we see. And so far, the trend is positive. There is a very strong tailwind momentum on the demand side. And rather than looking at export versus domestic, what we are doing as a team, and Venu is leading the whole team here in India to do that, is to make sure that India becomes an integral part of our global supply capabilities, whether it's on the technology side, with engineering, with R&D, but also then more and more on the manufacturing side. This is why we're here, and continue throughout the value chain on helping our customers to optimize operation and maintenance.
Right.
So the whole serviceability aspect of what we deliver. And this is more of an integrated supply chain. It's more of an integrated value chain that we want to deliver to customers. And we want to see India being an integral part of that. We don't want to look at how much is India versus another country. We have to leverage what we've been investing as a global leader and as a global company for the past decades in these global supply chain capabilities. We have to deal with the new trade barriers. We have to deal with trends that are incentivizing regionalized supply chains without compromising and without losing all the benefits that we got out of this global supply chain. But once again, India is one of these key parts of that supply chain that will take a different role going forward. Technology is there. Technology is there globally, is there with us, is there in India. Our customers also have a lot to contribute from a technology standpoint to adjust, to adapt. And the rest is about us making sure that we also pick the right opportunities, as Venu was saying.
Right.
We know that for us to drive this energy transition, we will have to build in capabilities across sectors. We'll have to be able to help electrifying transport, electrifying industry. And then we have a role to play there. And again, if I look at what India is driving, it's very much in the same direction.
Right. And is there an investment that you've earmarked to invest in the market here as far as future projects are concerned?
Well, we start with this. Let's make sure that we now have the right capabilities to ramp this up. I think there is very nice prospects on that. And then once again, if you look at our strategy, strengthen our core technology power grids, I think we can do more also in India for that. And then looking at the edge, Venu was mentioning, for us, for instance, to try to identify what would be the value add that we could bring on electrifying transport. Not the charging poles, but being able to provide solutions that are grid connected and that seamlessly integrate with the grid, seamlessly integrate with storage capabilities at the edge of the grid. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and we want to tap into that.
Right. And which export markets are you targeting from the India in manufacturing footprint?
Venu,
Yeah.
any?
I think we have a three-pronged strategy for the exports here. In some particular products, we have a global feeder, globally mandated, like our some of the breakers, etc. And then rest of the things we directly go to the African markets, Southeast Asia markets, and also some South American markets. And the third strategy is that we are also a feeder factory for our globally global operations, etc. in that. So these are the three-pronged strategy, and this put together take us to 1/4 of what we produce here. We export out of this.
Right. Yeah. Claudio, last question before I let you go. I think the last time you spoke to CNBC TV18, the world was in the midst of an energy crisis, even as a long winter was approaching. Today, the globe is within the throes of what is widely being regarded as a painful recession. Going forward, what is your forecast on the demand front? I know it's great in India, but from the global perspective, when there's so much stress in the economy, where do you see demand going from here, and how will it impact the kind of business that you do?
I think we're in a lucky position. The space we're in is right at the center of this clean energy transition, and it's somehow the cycle we're in is a bit decoupled from the overall economic cycle of GDP and consumption. It's really driven by this whole momentum that we see globally. We see it in India, we see it in Europe, in the US, and in Asia. Starts now picking up in Japan as well. It's across all markets. We're kind of on a cycle that it's on its own. It's supporting this demand. There will be ups and downs. This is not going to be an easy ride and a smooth linear ramp up. But it is going to be a midterm to long-term positive momentum. And we want to make sure that we do our part to contribute, particularly to be able to accelerate the clean energy transition, because we need that.
All right. And Venu, as far as India is concerned, I know revenues have been muted on account of various constraints, both the economy and supply chain pressures as well. Right. Given the fact that Claudio mentioned that you expect this for another 2 quarters at least, do you foresee revenues to continue to be muted even as order book grows, or do you see some recovery on the revenue front as well?
So as we communicated in our Q3, we do have revenues affected due to the various supply chain constraints, including some of the semiconductor chips, etc. in that. And the situation is becoming better, so we don't foresee that this will continue forever. But we definitely see that this will be at least affecting a couple of more quarters from now. But from the management standpoint, from the company standpoint, we are taking all the actions required to mitigate some of them, partly in the short term to mid term. Right. But as Claudio said, while our long-term demand drivers in India are intact, growth drivers in terms of as you rightly said, high capex, which is also articulated by the budget, both in terms of the infrastructure as well as on the rail. All those things are opportunities for us, and we are growing higher than the market, and we continue to do so, taking care of these kind of things in that.
Right. On that positive, optimistic note, Claudio, Venu, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure.